Hi everyone and welcome back to Digital Watches. Ever wanted to buy a watch but the description was one sentence long? I think we've all been there. Today's video is going to be about things to look at when buying digital watches but you don't really have a compelling description, or the seller isn't somebody experienced, they are just selling something from their house and they are only inserting a single description like used to work, needs battery, and so on. Usually in cases like this, the watch's price is really reasonable or it is very low because we are not dealing with an experienced seller. An experienced seller would know what to put in the description. He would actually know the market value of the watch, so you can expect a higher price versus somebody who's just selling something from their house. So we are going to take a look at what telltale signs to identify. So yeah, there are some things that will never be obvious from the images. In this video, we're only going to treat the elements that will be visible in the images. Starting with the first one, rainbowish screen. Usually you will see this as small concentric circles starting from the middle of the screen of the watch, going outwards, and they have a rainbowish tint. Now this is a telltale sign that the watch either has been left in the sun, or it has been left somewhere where the heat is higher, or it has been left with the batteries inside. That is a clear sign that the watch may have issues and is an overall bad look for the watch. Another thing that most collectors hate are scratches on the screen and overall on the body of the watch, especially if you are planning to have that watch in your display collection. Now the downside is that scratches are not always visible from the pictures. To have the scratches visible, you would have to have the lighting coming from a proper angle, which would make them more obvious. But study the images and look closely to the screen. If you see small ridges, it's highly likely that when turned into direct sunlight, those scratches are going to be more obvious. Now, one important thing to look at, and this is something that I always am very wary of, is red bluish residue in the watch. Now this can be seen if the watch has a picture with its back removed, or sometimes you can actually see it underneath the crystal. Now this residue starts to form when the watch's batteries are depleted and they start to leak inside, and it's not necessarily liquid leak, they also have a gas leak which actually forms these crystals, and they form on the copper and gold points of the watch, and they just start eating them away. Now if you see a watch like this, it's highly likely that inside it's a horror story. You have traces that have been interrupted and the watch will not work when you put a battery inside. I will only buy a watch like this if it's really rare and if it has a very low price. And if the watch is open and it has one of those back cover piezo ceramic speakers, don't forget to look for the spring. Finding a good replacement is a headache that you don't want to get your head wrapped around. Also, if the watch has screws on the back, look for over twisted screws. Now this you can see in the top recess of the head of the screw where you put your screwdriver. If that is over twisted or it's chipped away, it means somebody has tried to over twist the screws. And most likely, if you have a resin watch, the thread inside the plastic is going to be ripped apart because they over twisted the screw. Any water protection or ingress protection at that point is gone because you won't be able to tighten all the screws. Now another thing that is obvious from pictures is super glue stains, and we all know that after you apply super glue, no matter what material is it, if you apply it on plastic, if you apply it on metal, after a couple of hours you will see white stains forming around the piece that you glued. I usually don't even bother looking further at the watch if it has these kind of stains. It's highly likely that it's been tampered with and you don't know what you're going to find when you actually get the watch in your hands. A more rare occurrence is condensation inside the watch, and you usually see this as tiny water droplets under the crystal of the watch, or the screen has a misty look to it. And last but not least, screen bleeding. You should watch out for screen bleeding because it's something that with the age of the watch it will progress and it will spread along the screen. Usually screen bleeding starts from the edges of the screen. If pictures are taken with a direct light, you will have shadowing in some parts of the screen which will hide any screen bleeding. make sure you pay special attention to the edges of the screen. If you see a tiny bit of screen bleeding, you can bet that that will actually spread in the future. Now, screen bleeding is a broader subject and we may touch that in a future video, but there are certain techniques which fix the screen bleeding, but it usually is a temporary fix. Most of them involve pressing the screen against your fingers and trying to push the bleeding towards the edge, and then some mix of taking it into a cold room or sticking it into the freezer and something like that. But when you're using your fingers to push it to the side, it's highly likely that a small spot of liquid crystal will actually leak in between your fingers and will get stuck in the middle of the display. Again, if you see a display that doesn't have screen bleeding around the edges, but it actually has a small spot somewhere in the middle of the screen, not connected in any way to the edges, it's highly likely that somebody has tried to push out screen bleeding and they managed to separate a small amount of liquid crystal, which eventually got stuck in the middle of the display. Now, these are the things that I look when buying a watch online. Of course, there are things that are not obvious from the pictures, like if you have a sensor watch, if maybe the sensor is not working properly, or you have stuck buttons or other hidden defects. For those, there is no other tool than just trying to communicate with the seller. Thanks for tuning in and watching the video. I hope it's been valuable information for you. Join me next time when we are going to review the Citizen iVert, for which I had a mail time video uploaded the other days.